Welcome one and all. It's time to get spicy. My first ever Warhammer World matched play event. So, look at that. Evidence in danglage form. My attendance. 72 players, 2,000 points, 5 games of Age of Sigmar over the weekend. Only got back an hour or so ago from the event, so it should still be fresh in my mind. So I'm going to deeply probe from my still images that I took of each of the games and find out what I learned and show you exactly how I did at the event. So this is only my second singles tournament for Age of Sigmar at all. The last one was significantly smaller, and considering that was my first singles event, I think I did pretty well to get a couple of wins in that one. So I'm aiming to get more wins than losses at this event. That was my goal going in. So, let's get the giant arrow on the screen there. So, while you're just looking at what the first scenario is, I'll take you through my list. In fact, I'll just show you the battlefield so I can point to the units as well. So, my list, first of all, so Stormcast Eternals, obviously, because I don't have any other armies ready yet. Hammers of Sigmar, so when they're within, the unit is wholly within 12 inches of an objective, they get a 6+ ward save. And I also get the concussors that I have there as battle line. So, I've got Bastion, who is, for this game, he is down there on the battlefield. Obviously, 300 points, very, very tough to kill for most things. Some things have an easier time than others, but in general, difficult to shift, and he dishes out a lot of pain as well, especially if there is something with tons of wounds on the table. He's got a good ability for that, and is good for chewing through low wound models as well, because then he's going to get his wounds back at the end of the phase when he killed something, so very useful. The Knight Incantor, who, for this game, where is she hiding? There she is, next to the tower. So, for this tournament, because she's only a knight and has a shorter range on a lot of her spells, I decided to give her Lightning Blast, which doesn't have a range at all, it just affects the nearest unit. So I thought that would be a good choice there. Then we've got the Lord Imperatant, who's down here, who you'll notice generally is going to start off on the table every game, because when he's on the table, that means that a unit of Annihilators per turn can come in from the heavens 7 inches away from the enemy instead of 9 inches. And for this game I've given him Arcane Tome, Master of Magic for re-rolling purposes, and the spells I've given him Starfall, which stops enemies piling in, hopefully. Then we've got some long strike crossbows there. We've got 3 of them, and they're mostly going to be benefiting from my Holy Command Thunderbolt Volley, which I've taken in this list. I was able to take a second one as well, so I've taken Call for Aid, which means that when a unit of Liberators get killed, I can bring a fresh one in within 12 of one of my heroes. So just basically a bonus unit of Liberators, unless I'm really sloppy with the positioning and can't physically bring any back. And obviously, with it being Stormcast and me, and I've got Annihilators in there, it's obviously Scions of the Storm, so I can put up to half my units off the table to be deployed in from the heavens by turn 3. Who else haven't we covered yet? So there are 2 units of 5 Liberators, one is here. For this game, one is off the table in the heavens. And they're useful to keep in the heavens, the Liberators, because they're not that great, but they can just drop down on an objective later on, if they need to. And that's also where the Judicators are as well, because they're shorter range than the long strikes. So dropping them in, they can still shoot when they drop in, of course, so they don't lose their effectiveness on the turn they come down. So they're off there as well. And the Concussors, I already mentioned. And there's 2 units of Annihilators with Grand Hammers. So if you were paying attention to my previous tournament reports, the main change here is that the Shield Annihilators have been replaced with Judicators, who just seem to be a bit more useful, I think. More shooting ability. The Shield Annihilators weren't really pulling their weight, and having to keep them up until turn 3 to get the best out of them, I wasn't really feeling that. If I'm going to keep them in there that long, I want that to be my choice, not because they're not very good unless you do that. So with the Judicators, whenever you bring them down, immediately they can just start working to full effect, because they don't want to charge, they just want to shoot on the turn they come down. So also another one, because they're battle line. So with them being expert conquerors, them and the Liberators, those 3 units are going to be worth triple on objectives. And bounty hunters, I've got my concussors and all the annihilators. So if I'm up against any Galician veterans, then they'll be doing extra damage. And let's see, anything else to cover for my list? Oh yeah, my triumph, and I've got 1970 points. So 30 points below 2000. So if a fair few times you'd imagine I'm going to be able to get my triumph, which is inspired. So once per game, adding 1 to wound rolls for a unit. And that is that for my list. So, the first game is going to be close to the chest scenario, which is a really bizarre setup, and these are the kind of deployment maps that they should probably do away with. I don't mind having a weird shaped deployment, but you have to imagine that it's not very clear where you can actually deploy, because you can't be within 9 inches of your opponent's territory. I believe that's what it is. So this, that's your territory here, they should really draw another line somewhere inside, or put overlays on the table or something so you can see exactly where your territory is and where you can deploy. It's just needlessly complicated setting that up at the beginning of the game, measuring out exactly where, drawing the weird semicircles and whatnot around the place. And they could probably do away with that and make simpler deployment maps, I think. But anyway, so there are 6 objectives, and there are 3 each, and one of them gets nominated to be the alpha objective. So, I've deployed in this area here, and my opponent is there, and you can see that it's Fire Slayers by the vast amount of Magma Droths. So I'm going to bring up my opponent's list here and tell you what's in it. Not going to go into as much detail as my list, because I'd be lying if I said I knew all the rules for all the units I'm going to be facing. So, 4 Magma Droths, obviously. There's also a Krond Spine. That's most of the army. So, the Magma Droths in question, one is Auric Rune Sun. 3 of them are, actually. So, they're the battle line. The one that's the leader is Auric Rune Father, which is one of these ones back here. It might be that one. It's definitely not this one. So, one of these is more powerful, and the others are more standard. So the Krond Spine, which is there, if you've not faced the Krond Spine before, it's very tricky to deal with. So for my list, one of the things I feel my list excels at is dropping in and taking something out in the first turn, something that's really big preferably, because Bastion can just drop a number of dice equal to its wounds characteristic on it. So if it's something big, it's going to get some mortal wounds there. I've got the long strikes with the Thunderbolt Volley, so they can shoot twice at it. And then I can drop Annihilators next to it and charge in on a rerollable 7-inch charge, do mortal wounds, and then smash its face to bits. So that's what I like to do. Something like the Krond Spine is not a viable target for that strategy, because you can't outright kill it in one go. You can do enough wounds on it so it's likely to be diminished at the end of the round, but that doesn't kick in until next turn. So it's kind of like Marathi in the way that it doesn't behave the way most units do, and you can't kill it all in one go. You've got to kill it over multiple turns, and it's slightly less effective against my army, actually, the Krond Spine, than it is against others, because I don't have any endless spells for it to eat, and I don't have any monsters for it to kill, which cause its level to go up, so it takes even longer to kill. So you can reach a point where it's actually impossible to kill it by the end of the game. So it's a tricky one. I saw quite a few of them at this event, and this isn't the only one I'm going to be facing during the tournament. I'll spoil that right now. And also in this list, there is... what is the other unit? 5 Auric Hearthguard, who are at the back there, who are just a little short-range, shooty, vaguely fighty kind of unit. So mostly Magma Droths. So what's my plan here? Krond Spine, not a good target. I'm going to try and take out Magma Droths. They don't have a huge amount of wounds, so I actually feel like if I get fairly fortunate, I could kill 2 in a turn. They're not Gargants. I don't feel like I necessarily have to completely focus on one, but I can wait and see what Bastion's Lightning from the Heavens does. So if he can just do multiple mortal wounds onto one of them, let's say 5, then suddenly that thing's in danger, and because I'm going to be shooting it twice as well, and targeting it with anything else that I can, if I can just shoot one of them off, or get it heavily damaged, then maybe I don't even need to attack that one necessarily, and I can use the Annihilators to come down and attack a different one, because they're certainly capable of killing Magmadroth in one round, Annihilators. It's not as easy as it is on some units, because obviously they're big monsters, so they can roar to stop the Annihilators getting all-out attack on them. So, these are the Magmadroths. Very nice. I think they're a bit shinier in real life than they are on these photos. So this is what I've got in the heavens: Annihilators, Liberators, Judicators. That's going to be fairly standard setup. Sometimes I'll have 5 units in the heavens because I've got 10. But for this game I've got 4 up there because I want to have Bastion down at the start, because obviously there are viable targets for his lightning. So, here we go. Turn 1. So I have turn 1. My opponent elects to give me the first turn. And you can see that one of the Magmadroths has gone already. So Bastion's lightning, I think it did about 6 wounds to it. And then I was able to just shoot it to death with the long strikes. So Thunderbolt Volley and then shooting in the shooting phase. So one Magmadroth instantly killed. Annihilators come down, dish out some mortal wounds to these two. Want to charge into this one, because when we get the Annihilators over here, if they can kill this guy or heavily wound it, it's not going to have any backup. So all this stuff is quite far away, and that would be spreading out my opponent's army. If I could just kill those 2 Magmadroths instantly, that would be amazing. But even just heavily damaging it is going to make it very vulnerable to shooting, and you can't really hide from my shooting, because you have to get out there to score objectives, putting you in range of the long strikes. The Judicators can just drop down whenever they like and shoot you, and they all do mortal wounds. So the Magmadroths have an ability where they splash mortal wounds in combat back onto you, I think. So hitting them in combat isn't as nice as just shooting them off. So the Annihilators are still going to give it a go though. However, they come down and they fail their rerollable 7-inch charge. So wow. So they're kind of sitting ducks now, which is kind of the nightmare. If you fail the charge with Annihilators and it's the first turn of the round, then there's a chance you'll get doubled, so even if they do a decent job at surviving whatever comes at them, they're still going to get killed over 2 turns, definitely. So they're total sitting ducks, probably not going to be able to contribute to the game other than by dying. So that could have been really nice. The Stormkeep, hello there. Roar is one problem, but Unleash Hell and Stomp are a huge threat to Annihilators. Stomp alone has a 1/3 chance of killing an Annihilator. Yes, Stomp is another one that's definitely a big threat. And Unleash Hell, there's a game coming up later where Unleash Hell is a bit of an issue, but no spoilers. So, Stomp is very dangerous though to Annihilators, yes. Especially in this situation against Magmadroths, because when I charge in and do mortal wounds to them on the charge, then there's a chance that those mortal wounds will bounce back onto the Annihilators. So when you add those mortal wounds to the Stomp, suddenly you're not going to be attacking with that many if some of them have dropped. So, very dangerous opponent, not the kind of target you want for Annihilators, but there's not a lot else to choose from. The Cron Spine certainly isn't a good target. It's definitely not going to kill that in a round. Not physically possible. So, I'm not doing too much more movement, because I would rather try and outshoot this army for the most part. And at the end of that round I've got 4 victory points, because I did my battle tactic, which I think was just to get onto one of the objectives, and that meant I held 1 objective. Wait a minute. So I did my battle tactic, I held 1 objective, and I hold 2 objectives. I don't hold more than my opponent yet, because I haven't brought down any of my units that are going to land on objectives yet. So I just got 4. So I could have got 1 more if I'd brought another unit down on one of these objectives, but then they would instantly be killed. So I'm just holding back the Liberators and the Judicators until things have spread out a bit and they're fighting so they don't get instantly munched. So 4 points. Into the Fire Slayer's turn. So the Cron Spine's moving up. We've got Magma next to it. So that's quite a deadly little combo there. And I don't fancy my chances entirely with what I've got here, because, again, the fact that you can't kill this in 1 turn means it's a terrible thing for Bastion to fight, because he's not going to kill it, he's not going to get his wounds back, because he's not killing a model. It's just quite a bad army for Bastion to face in combat in general. It's pretty good for his lightning down from the heavens, because there's a lot of big, juicy monsters for him to target. Over here, there's some death. The Annihilators all get eaten by Magmadroth. And there are their corpses, just perched on the edge of the table. So my opponent is able to get 5 points for taking another one of the objectives. So he's got more objectives than me, holding 1 and 2, and gets the battle tactic, which I believe could have been an eye for an eye. May well have been, because obviously those Annihilators were clearly going to die. So my opponent gets the double turn, which could be bad when you look at this situation we've got here. So we've got 2 Magmas, and we've got the Kronspine all in range now. And was I set up sufficiently against the possibility of a double? I wasn't particularly close, but maybe I could have been further back as well. And of course there's a chance I could have killed this one had the Annihilators got into it. So it would have been looking much healthier then. So, into combat they go. And the Magmadroths have the ability where if they don't shoot for a turn, they kind of store up the power of the shot, so it becomes more potent in the next round, so it gets a lot more rend on it. So it's obviously useful against my army doing that. I don't have much protection against mortal wounds or ridiculously high rend. I'm relying on my armor saves a lot. I do have the ward save from the objectives, but it's only a 6+, which, as we know, never succeeds. So Bastion's the only one, really, with a good ward save. So we've got the Magmas in, we've got the Kronspine in, and I expect lots of this stuff to die. Bastion gets roared, which is probably a good idea, because Bastion, with all-out attack, is definitely in with a shot of killing a Magmadroth on his own, especially when it's already wounded. So you can see a lot of the Liberators have died immediately. But because they're all dead, then I can bring a fresh unit back within 12 of one of my heroes. So I've brought them back right there. I would have liked to have done that later and brought them back in a more useful position, like on an objective, but because there are enemies around here, that's the closest I can get them to this area. So Liberators are back. Free unit of Liberators. The Dracoths get eaten. And Bastion gets eaten. So I've done quite a few wounds to the Kronspine though. So I think, if you look at how many wounds that Magmadroth has taken, I think that one's up to 10. So significant damage has been dealt out, but probably damage limitation and game over at this point, because I've lost Bastion and the Concussors, and Kronspine is still alive. My opponent's pulling away into the lead, but let's see if I can do something about that. So on my turn, I've got my Annihilators in, the next unit, into the Magma. You can see the other one's dead. I managed to shoot that one down. And the Annihilators get in there, they get roared. And sadly, they don't manage to kill it. And then they get eaten. So, Annihilators, slightly subpar performance. Both the units probably. The first one just failed the charge, and the second one didn't hit with enough of their attacks to threaten that Magma. I've got the Judicators down now as well, who were plinking away shots just to try and kill things, and the long strikes, so with them combined I was able to take that one out. These Liberators have run up there onto that objective, so I'm trying to claim more objectives. If I'd killed this one, then I think I'd be either pretty close to taking this objective or almost there, because the Kronspine is there, of course, is a big monster, so that's worth quite a few. But I have got some models around here, so I'd be on my way to taking that objective back if I'd killed this one as well. But sadly, it's alive, and this one, so there's still 2 of the Magmas. One of them's just chilling out up there on the objective. And I think my Liberators are the only unit I haven't brought down yet, because I didn't see anywhere useful to put them. Because really I want to save it until there's an open objective for them to come down on, so the earliest time they'll be able to do that is next turn now. And that's also the latest, because you have to bring everything down in turn 3 or it's gone. So you can see the Imperatant is doing his best against the Krondspine. And I was able to pick up a few points though. I was able to get my battle tactic and have multiple objectives, but not more than my opponent. So still hanging in there. It's not horribly out of my reach. So next. So this magma is on 9 wounds there, you can see. And also at this point I have got my liberators down, because I think I get the double now. So the liberators are in, and I'm hoping to shoot this magma down. But I don't think it's going to happen. So we've got the liberators down there. There isn't anywhere really I'm desperate to put them at this point. So I'm just going to try and use them as a bit of a blockade there to stop this stuff getting to the adjudicators. That's the best thing I can think of. The other thing I could have done maybe is double them up on an objective, put them around this one, so I've got 10 liberators guarding that objective. But then they're a bit far from anything else they can do. Here, they're kind of defending the adjudicators. They're also adding to this objective, I think. Some of them are within range. And they're also able to threaten these two areas as well, potentially later. So I do redeploy them, though, to get away. And this Magma Droth is coming in. And I'm going to be able to unleash hell in this round. When it tries to come in. Krondspine and Imperatant still fighting, but Imperatant finally gets eaten. And this magma makes its way over there and eats the liberators. This one doesn't get in over here. So I've still got a couple of battle line units there. By the way, my grand strategy is take what's theirs. So I've got... Do I have a chance of getting it in this game? Yes, if these 2 units live over there, but I don't have a lot of units left now. Some of them are heavily wounded. This Magma Droth, I think I've been a bit unlucky not to have killed this one so far, but my opponent is just racking up big points now. So was able to get my Alpha objective as well. Obviously, holding all my objectives, one of them is bound to be the Alpha. I think that one was the enemy Alpha for the whole game, which I didn't really have the ability to get to past a certain point. What I would like to have done is have Annihilators back here come in, kill something, and then they can hold an objective, but I needed them elsewhere, sadly, because everything else went wrong. So we've got Liberators versus Magma Droth. They decide to head out there, and they can't kill it though. So the battle tactic I used was, I think it was a Stormcast specific battle tactic, which means if you kill a unit with a Redeemer unit attacks, then you complete the tactic. So I chose this because it was almost dead, and I heavily damaged it from the Adjudicators shooting. And I think I only had to do 1 more wound on it in combat with the Liberators to get the battle tactic, but they failed, so wasn't able to get it that turn. So I would have still been well in the game there if I'd achieved that, I would say. Still not looking good. And the Knight Incanter is just running out into the middle just to invite someone to have a fight. So Liberators are all dead, Krondspine's coming in, it's not looking healthy at all, and eats them. So more points, and there's no real battle tactics I can do at this stage. I can just try and shoot things off, and I do shoot down that Magma Droth finally. Doesn't really accomplish anything, but there you go. So in this tournament you get points. You're ranked based on your wins, and then when it's equal, then it's whether they were major or minor victories, and then after that it goes down to battle tactics and grand strategies. Whoever had the most of those successful in their games goes higher in the table, out of 72 players. So even if you're losing a game, it's still worth trying to get as many battle tactics as possible and your grand strategy, because it could be useful in a tie later on in the rankings. So not able to get any battle tactics there. My opponent's racking up more points. There you go. Couldn't get my grand strategy, obviously, because I don't have things left alive. So it's a loss, but it's not a ridiculously huge loss. And I think that was a tough list to fight against, all those magmas. So let's see what the score was. So my opponent got, where are we? There we go. So my opponent got, it's just kicked me to the top of the page again. There we go. My opponent got 29, I got 16. So not the worst thing ever, but not the best. So I think my opponent got his grand strategy as well, looking at that. So into round 2. And I'm going to be bumped down in the tables, obviously. So I'm now on table 30, which is quite close to the bottom. And the scenario is the Realmstone Cache, or Cache, however you like to pronounce it. So there's an objective in the centre. And then, which turn does it happen? So it explodes, and it jumps to these locations, or these locations, or these locations partway into the game. So, I think it might be the 3rd battle round that happens. Let's see. At the start of the 3rd battle round, there you go. So you get 2 chances to score just on this one, and then it explodes into different positions. So it could go anywhere. So, as long as you're not overly committed to any particular spot, then you're in with a chance, because it's going to be somewhere on this side and somewhere on that side. So it's not going to completely put you out of position unless you're really sloppy with it. And this time I'm up against... Dun, dun, dun. Let's just bring up my opponent's list here. Which is... So it's the Soulblight Gravelords. It's the Virkos Dynasty. And... yeah, it's pretty scary looking. So there's some terrifying units. There's one big monster, which is what I like to see. If I see one big monster with a lot of wounds, that means Bastion is going to be starting on the table. So you can immediately start raining down lightning on it, especially if it doesn't have much of a ward save. So, that is Prince Vordre, 455 points. Which is a lot of points, obviously, but it's also a huge monster that's very dangerous if you can't immediately kill it. But, as I stated, I'm very well equipped to take out a big, ridiculously powerful monster in the first turn. That's kind of the trick to this list. Killing something big each turn is something definitely within my means. So we also have a Vampire Lord, who is... they kind of blend in at the moment, but let's get a bit of a close-up. So, the Vampire Lord is around here somewhere. It's on foot. I'm not sure I can pick it out exactly. That's the Necromancer. There is a Vampire Lord in there somewhere. There is also a White King on Skeletal Steed, which is there. There are skeletons. So there's a unit of 20 skeletons and 2 units of 10. So those are the 2 units of 10. I think that unit there is Graveguard, because there is a unit of 20 Graveguard and a unit of 10 Graveguard. Some of them are starting off in the graves, so they haven't come on yet. So those are skeletons, those are Graveguard. There is also another hero here. This is an interesting one. What's this one called? Is this Kritza? I'm going to assume that's who it is. So 95 points, but when you kill this hero, it just pops back up again. So you just keep killing it over and over, it keeps coming back. So that's the trick there. There is also some cavalry. There are 5 Blood Knights, which are at the back there. And there are some Black Knights as well, but they are not starting on the table. They're starting off in reserve here. So we've got 20 Graveguard, 10 Skeletons, and 5 Black Knights off the table. They're going to come up from the graves at some point. So, what I see when I look at this deployment immediately is... this is what I want, because there's a lot of screening potential here, but nothing on this side is screened out. So I'm going to be able to drop Annihilators in right here, charge them in, and I'm going to be, if I get to go first, I'm going to be shooting up this big beastie twice, because I've got my Holy Command as well. So shooting it twice, Bastion's Lightning on it, dropping Annihilators there, doing mortal wounds, charging in, doing mortal wounds, and then because they're right next to the Blood Knights, if that's enough to take out this thing, if it just dies before the charge, then they would just charge the Blood Knights. If it needs to be finished off, they could charge in, put their mortal wounds onto this, and then pile into the Blood Knights. So I'm liking this setup here. One thing I don't want to see when I have this list is all the enemy big stuff that I really want to kill just surrounded by layers and layers of skeletons. That wouldn't be a fun time, and I would have to actually wait for things to move before dropping in. So anytime you can castle against Annihilators, probably good idea. So that's where the objective is right now. So these are grave sites here. These aren't objectives, they're just 4 grave sites. So if I have units near that, I can limit where the raising can take place. And the units that get killed during the game can also potentially be brought back. There's a dice roll involved, and then they can be brought back to a grave site at half strength as well. So that would affect Graveguard and Skeletons and Black Knights, I think. Not Blood Knights or anything vampire related, just the full-on dead stuff. So we've got Bastion on the table, Imperatant always on the table. We've got all the Liberators, Long Strikes and Concussors, and the Knight Incanter off the table. We've got the Judicators and the Annihilators. So the Judicators, as I was saying, I think it's just useful keeping them off the table because dropping them in doesn't diminish them at all. They're still just as potent when they drop in compared to if they'd started there, and it keeps them safe. And I can drop them onto objectives as well later on. So I get the first turn. Bastion is moving up with this Liberator shield in front of him. Everyone else moving up a little bit. Not too much though. So I use Thunderbolt Volley, shoot the zombie dragon twice, and you'll see that it's dead. So what I described, it happened exactly that way. So Bastion did mortal wounds to it with his lightning from the heavens. The Long Strikes shot it twice. The Annihilators dropped down, did mortal wounds, charged in, put all their mortal wounds on it, killed it, then piled in and killed 3 Blood Knights. And then in return, they didn't kill any Annihilators, so that's like the absolute dream there. The Annihilators normally get killed after they come in and kill something, but on this occasion they're all still alive, so they're actually still a threat into the next turn. And because 3 of them are alive, there's a good chance at least one of them might get a chance to attack something next turn as well. So it's just a little bonus. Anytime you can fight with Annihilators for more than 1 turn, that's a huge bonus. So we've got rid of the biggest enemy threat. It's also a spellcaster, and it's looking very good from this point on, because it's also one of the things that would be a threat to something like Bastion, for example. He doesn't necessarily like fighting the big stuff in combat, so the fact that's gone, great. Blood Knights are also heavily taken down now, and it's just good news all round. So I've got them up onto the centre objective, so I'm going to get my battle tactic. I've got Mystic Shield on Bastion, just in case everything went wrong here, and I get doubled and everyone gets charging in on Bastion here. I've got that to fall back on. So 4 points, because there's only 1 objective, so that's the maximum at the moment. My opponent has gone for eye for an eye in the first round, because I, of course, kill the unit, so he wants to kill one, and probably the Annihilators. So the Blood Knights are able to move over the Annihilators and then do mortal wounds onto them, which is something I remember from a previous tournament. They couldn't do it to Bastion because they can only do it with units that have a particularly low wounds characteristic. So Bastion was able to tie up Blood Knights in a previous tournament for a long time on that basis. The Annihilators can't do that, however. But anything they do now, as I said, is just a bonus. So even if they distract anything, that's a bonus, because they expected to die after killing all that stuff. 1 Blood Knight has returned with some kind of ability, some kind of undead, fiendish ability, and the White King has joined in the combat as well. So there's 4 things there fighting the Annihilators, with one of them already dead from mortal woundage. However, you'll notice that they're still alive, and all the Blood Knights are dead. Yes. They are dead now, though. But before they get killed, they do manage to kill all the Blood Knights. They get killed by the subsequent attacks from the other units. But before they went down, murder. So my opponent's also able to get 4 victory points for taking over this objective by moving enough units close enough, and also charging this guy that keeps coming back to life into my Liberators and takes one of them out. So these Skeletons, because they are Galician veterans as well with the Expert Conquerors, They're also worth a lot on the objective. So they've taken that off me and got the 4 points for the turn. So they just about got the battle tactic by killing the Annihilators with eye for an eye. And on to the next turn. So you'll notice that the Grave Lords are moving again. That's because they've got the double. Now, this isn't a bad double at all for me, because this sets me up for a future double, and also there's not a lot they can actually do this turn. So in fact, what I believe happened is that I let them have the turn. I let them have first crack at turn 2 after winning the roll-off, because what are they going to do, really? There's not that much dangerous here. They can't be bringing units in a particularly dangerous position at the moment into the grave sites, and the Grave Guard are really far away. So I just don't feel that threatened right now. So I'd rather have the chance at a double. Because when you've got Annihilators on the table, getting a double can be quite potent, and I've still got 1 unit to come in, because then they can come in, kill something. If they survive, they can then charge something else, which is an opportunity you don't always get. So there is a unit of skeletons popped up there from the grave site, and we've got the Vampire Lord, and the White King, and this guy, and all the Grave Guard. They all get into the Liberators and kill them, but it's Liberators, and I don't care. Bastion ends up being able to pile in as well, so he's able to kill off some skeletons. So he's in combat now with something small, so he's always going to get his wounds back if he's killing them. And the unit over here, they appear to be gone. So, I believe they had hell unleashed on them, and then they got munched. So yeah, my opponent is able to get the 4 points again though, which is the maximum at this stage. So I've gone for eye for an eye this time, because I lost the Liberators, and the chance of me not killing a unit is minimal. I've got Bastion, the Dracoths, Imperatant, Long Strikes, I've got all my units to drop down. I'm going to kill something. There's some wounded heroes around here. So what I'm going to try and do is try and take out these heroes and try and thin out these Grave Guard. So you can see that dice I've put there. That is because the Lord Imperatant has cast Starfall there, which on a 3+ prevents any unit within 3 from piling in. So it prevents them from piling in, but it doesn't prevent these skeletons because I failed the roll. So that unit, the Grave Guard, cannot pile in, which is a big deal because the Annihilators just need to get within range of a few of them and whomp them to death, and then they won't be able to pile in to fight back. So that's a big deal getting that spell off, and it's the first time I've actually used that spell because it just hasn't been relevant before. So quite a big deal. I should probably start thinking about using it against bigger targets as well, because then piling in sometimes can be strategically advantageous. But at the moment I'm at the mindset of use it on units with lots of models. So I've been shooting up the heroes and doing mortal wounds to the heroes when the Annihilators landed, and these Liberators are chasing after that Necromancer, because why not? And you can see, look at this absolute carnage that's gone on here. So there is something that died. So let's see, the Annihilators went in there, whomped things. Bastion whomps things. However, I'm not able to kill enough to claim this objective yet. So I only get my battle tactic. So I did kill off a unit, which was... Let's see, which one died? Who did I kill? Was there another hero in here? Let's see. I can't remember who actually got killed, but I think I killed a unit though to get my battle tactic. And in the next turn, so I get the double now, which is obviously great because Annihilators are still in play. And I've got Desecrate Their Lands as my choice. I'm picking this one at the back here, so I'm going to bring the Judicators down on it, which also puts them in position for my grand strategy of take what's theirs, and they can obviously shoot from there. So at this point I just start murdering, and you can see the heroes have all been finished off, and I've just got everyone smashed into those graveguard. They're all going to die, and get 5 points because the objectives did reveal themselves this round. So one of them was here, which the Judicators have claimed there, and the other one is down in the corner there. So it's going very well now, turning the score round. It was always going well on kills, and in fact you can see here that they just obliterate everything. So my opponent only has things that he brings back from the grave and some skeletons. So with that in mind, we do get the Black Knights popping up in this round, and we get some more skeletons popping up. And this guy comes back as well. What's his name? Kritzer comes back from the dead again. Well, this is the first time, but he can do it multiple times. So there's an objective down here that the Long Strike is currently holding. There's one up there the Judicators are holding. I've got all my murder machines in the middle on this objective. So I don't think there's much around that's a big threat at the moment. There's a big unit of skeletons there, but it's only skeletons at the end of the day, and Bastion would love to get his hands on them, as would the Annihilators with their bounty hunter status. So they do get into the long strikes. They've lost a few skeletons, obviously, to unleash hell, but then they take down a long strike. My opponent is only able to get 1 point for that turn, which would be for holding that objective, I think. Not able to complete the battle tactic. I can't remember which one was chosen, but it wasn't completed. So it's looking good for me. Bastion, the concussors coming in, whomping everyone left and right. The Annihilators are moving back here. So for my grand strategy, I need to have more units than my opponent in their territory. So I'm getting multiple units in there just in case anything appears in their territory. And murdering everything. Eventually we get round to fighting skeletons. Bastion and the concussors have a good time whomping them. But my opponent just doesn't have the means to get points from this point onwards because I'm just controlling all the objectives. You can see my Liberators actually went in there and killed the Black Knights. They did take some shooting from the Judicators as well. But when the Black Knights came in, they failed their charge. So it was a 9-inch though, so it's definitely not a guarantee. As I know from dropping units down from the heavens, that 9-inch charge is a bit of a difficult one. So the Liberators managed to kill them with an obscenely good round of attacks. And yeah, ends up being quite a comfortable score. We both get our grand strategies. My opponent's grand strategy was Lust for Domination, and I can't remember what that does, but it was achieved. And so there we go for round 2, and the final score was 22 points to me, 14 to my opponent. So a nice bounce back from that round 1 loss, and well on track to getting wins in the bag at this event. On to round 3, so I've jumped up to the lofty heights of table 20 now. So, the next game. So, this scenario, did I not take a picture of the book for this one? Okay, is it the Prize of Gallet? Is that what it's called? The one where one objective becomes activated each round out of these 5, and the first one has to be one of these 3. So it's that one anyway, and I'm against the Cruel Boys. So sneaky Cruel Boys. I can tell you what's in that list. Okay, let's have a look. So you can see for my deployment, I've got Liberators, I've got the Imperatant in the terrain there, I've got my Long Strikes out, I've got the Incanter, and I've got the Concussors. So Bastion is not on the table. So I've obviously got a plan for Bastion, and I'll explain what it is when I go through my opponent's list. So Bastion's off the table with all the Annihilators, Judicators, and a unit of Liberators. So 5 units off the table, the maximum. So there's my opponent's army, and it contains a Swamp Caller Shaman and Potgrot, who is there. It contains 2 of those, actually. So, where's the other one? There's another one somewhere. There is a Kronspine, which is over on the right, so I'll show you that in a moment. In fact, it might be in the next picture. There you go. There's the Kronspine, which I assume is a conversion. It does look a bit like the Daughters of Cain Endless Spell Snake to me, but it looks very custom. So, got the Kronspine. There is a Snatcher Boss on Sludge Raker Beast. So that's the general, which is this one here. So from playing against Cruel Boys before, I've had several games against Rem's Cruel Boys. One thing I always note them for is their ability to have auras that boost the mortal wound output of nearby units. So the Shaman, oh there's the other Shaman there. So the Shamans and this guy. Boosting mortal wound output is not something I want in my life when I'm relying on armor saves for my survival. So, Cruel Boys, they do a lot of mortal wounds. They shoot with mortal wounds, they stab you with mortal wounds, just mortal wounds up to the eyeballs. So I don't want that being boosted. So he's a viable target, but I'm not going to be able to go after him in the first round with Annihilators, because they're not going to have anywhere nearby to land, because they've been well screened out here, because there's a model there as well, who's screening up to about there. So it'd be too long a charge to get to him. So that's why Bastion's not on the table, because I'm not targeting him in round 1. Then we've got the battle line. We've got 2 units of Manskewer Bolt Boys. So they're 10 units of 10. There's one here, behind some Hobgrot Slitters. And the other one is here. So those Bolt Boys are outrageous. So they can do multiple mortal wounds on 6s, they can do multiple mortal wounds on 5s, and you can boost them so they can do even more mortal wounds on 6s. So they are a big threat, especially with Unleash Hell, because as I know from using Unleash Hell and looking for 6s, you don't care about the -1 to hit, because you only care about doing those mortal wounds. So Unleash Hell, very powerful. Annihilators will just drop instantly, charging into that unit. So I cannot afford Annihilators to charge into the Bolt Boys. So, what's my plan? Well, Bastion's not on the table. He is someone that probably could survive an Unleash Hell against Bolt Boys because of his ward save. So, he would then get in, kill some of them, and hopefully get his wounds back. So, here's one plan I can use to go after the Bolt Boys. I can also shoot at them, potentially. So, we'll see. However, because they're so sneaky, they are able to move one of the units into a different spot on the battlefield. So they've got 10 Bolt Boys over here, which encourages me to, for the first time ever, use Bastion's ability to set up D3 of my units again. So I move the long strikes away so they can't be shot by the Bolt Boys, because they would be target numero uno. So they're now out of range of the enemy shooting, because they've got longer range, so they don't need to be in range. So it's just the Dracoths that are going to get shot now. And that's how we're looking. So, I've explained my plan with Bastion. Annihilators are going to wait for a good time to charge in that doesn't involve them being killed by Unleash Hell. That would be really nice. So my opponent is going first, pushing forward a bit. And so one thing that he's done here, he has actually left a gap for the Annihilators by pushing forward, which is unnecessary because of these Hobgrots. They could have easily spread out and covered the area. However, he's not done that. I think he was more concerned about not leaving a 9-inch space for Bastion. And down here, the Kronspine is moving in onto an objective. Which objective? This one became active first, so you can see the Hobgrots have conga lined their way onto it. So they're going to claim that. And 4 victory points. So yeah, not a lot of action. The Bolt Boys do shoot off the Dracoths, which is obviously not nice, but they're just nasty. Nasty, nasty Bolt Boys. So I pick against the odds. So I'm going to get onto... I want to get this objective with the Liberators, which they can easily do, because there's more of them there, so I just want to get into range. What I thought might happen when I moved onto it, I thought my opponent might then redeploy and move all the Hobgrots onto the objective. But that would risk me just charging them and killing them all. So you'll see what they actually do. So, Bastion drops down. I said he wants to absorb and unleash hell. He drops down, and he ends up charging into these Bolt Boys on a 9-inch charge, rerollable. He makes it with the reroll, makes it in there, and just smashes 8 of them. So there's 2 left. These Annihilators, here, there's 1 left at the moment. Let's see. Stormkeep says, I don't think Bastion can use his redeployment ability if he's in reserve. Is that true? Let's have a look at his War Scroll, because I never thought to check that. If that's the case, then I'm a filthy cheater. Let's see. I know the Imperator has to be on the table. I know Bastion has to be on the table to drop down his lightning. Let's see. Where is it? Okay, at the start of your first battle round, after determining who has the first turn, but before the first turn begins, you can pick D3 Hammers of Sigmar units on the battlefield and set them up again. Yeah, so it doesn't say that Bastion has to be on the battlefield. It does not specify. So I take that to mean that he doesn't have to be there. So maybe I'm not a cheat. Okay, next. The Annihilators came down, and you can see that the big guy is dead. So because he'd moved into a position where I could set them up behind him, I was then able to target him with shooting, and then the Annihilators came in, crunched him to death, and then this Shaman piled into them to attack them as well. So they did take some wounds. So they did have an Unleash Hell to face, but because they were over here, not many of them were in range. So I thought getting an Unleash Hell from these Bolt Boys, when only about 2 of them would be in range, was the best choice. And then Bastion was able to charge in unhindered, so he didn't have to face an Unleash Hell at all. And the 2 Bolt Boys didn't manage to wipe out the unit, so I was still able to kill it. And because there's 1 Annihilator left, so I get 4 points as well, 1 Annihilator is still alive. So if I get the double, something diabolical can happen here. So if I kill this Shaman with shooting, I could then charge in the Annihilator into the Bolt Boys on his own to eat the Unleash Hell. He's going to die, but it's only 1 Annihilator, and I'll have a fresh unit of 3 right here to follow in after him. So, if I get the double, and what do you know? I do get the double. So, that's exactly what happened. The single Annihilator was freed up because I shot down the Shaman. The single Annihilator charged in, got killed by Unleash Hell. The 3 Annihilators then followed him in and killed all the Bolt Boys. So that is the dream. Anytime you've got a unit that can eat the Unleash Hell, and obviously I don't have anything like Ether Wings or Prosecutors or anything like that in the list, so having that 1 Annihilator left alive and then getting a double, so he was still alive when the next batch come in, was a big deal. So, very, very nice. And Bastion is obviously able to finish off those Bolt Boys. And the Liberators there. So when I moved the Liberators forward earlier, these Hobgrots redeployed but actually ran away. They wanted to stay alive. And that way, if the Liberators had charged them, for example, then there would have been an Unleash Hell maybe from behind. So these, what are these squadrons called? Have I even mentioned the Gut Rippers? I don't think I have. There's just a unit of Gut Rippers there. But they haven't done much yet. So I'm not able to get that many points because I'm not controlling too many objectives yet. But I've killed so much. Surely I'm going to start claiming objectives now. So, next round. So this is a bit not the best move from me, I think. When the Kronspine comes over here, I think I had the chance to... I could have moved the Long Strikes away last turn for a start. They don't need to be this close to the Imperator, but I wanted to unleash hell on the Kronspine. And probably not a good idea, because now when he piles in, he's going to be able to swing around and eat them. Which he does, but he is wounded though. But he does eat them. So they could have moved away. Anytime you're facing a big monster like that, there's a big threat, spread units out so he's not able to go after multiple at once. And I do knock him down a level though, so that's why he's got that hat now. So I'm just reading the end of the Stormkeep comment here. Typically can't use any ability in reserve unless it specifically says so. With the Imperatant, it says, I think it says something about this unit being on the battlefield, doesn't it? So I don't know whether it has to specify or not that Bastion is on the battlefield or not to use that thing that's on his scroll. It's just something that happens to the army. So is that as a result of him being in the army or being on the battlefield? I don't know. I'll leave that one to the experts. So someone consult with the rules gods or themselves if they are rules gods. I think Stormkeep fellows are certainly in that category. So let me know if I'm a filthy cheater. So you can see at this point my opponent is actually up on points because he's able to then eat the Imperatant. He's got quite a few of these objectives. Still got that one from having, or got that one now from having lots of models on it who have gone in there, and you can see the Hobgrots. So they've gone in there and killed a lot of Liberators. So lots of objectives in opponent's hands, but which ones are actually active? So that one is, and which other ones? Because we haven't put any tokens on them. So I can't even remember which ones are active now. But anyway, my opponent is winning on objectives. In my next turn, there's not that much for me to do, actually. So you can see I've got the Judicators on up there. Bastion is making his way back to the fight while keeping his toe in there to claim that objective, which has been activated. And I'm able to get 5 points for that round because I've claimed this one. I already had one that was active, which may have been this one, because I had the Annihilators in it, and they've left it now. So they've come down to fight, killed lots of Hobgrots, and it's close into the next round. This objective is just a big brawl. So Kronspine himself isn't able to get a level back because I don't have any endless spells or monsters, which is nice, so he's a bit weaker now. Heading up there to sit between two objectives, because why not? And able to get 5 again, able to get the battle tactic. I think in future games I've taken pictures of most of the battle tactics to remind myself what they are. But there's quite a few easy ones, not as many as there used to be. But there are a few that you can generally rely on. It's only in turn 4 and 5 you might find yourself struggling. But usually you can do 3 to 4 of them quite easily in a game. So, it's looking a bit dicey, but I'm able to get 4 in my next round because I've claimed objectives here. Bastion's still got this one, and you can see that Bastion killed those Hobgrots. So he saw a target, went for it, murdered, and I've cleared out a lot of this objective as well. There's just some Hobgrots there, tiny unit, and the Kronspine. I think that's all he's got left. I've got quite a few units compared to that. I've got Bastion, I've got the Liberators, I've got the Judicators, and I think I've got somebody else, but we'll find out. So I had barged through enemy lines in this round. So this is the final round, and I get to go first in it. So, barged through enemy lines, which coincides with my grand strategy, because I have to have more units in my opponent's deployment area. So I've got the Judicators, and I've got Bastion in there. My opponent has 2 units, but if he wants to stop me getting my grand strategy, he'll have to use both of them and sprint back into his own territory, which is going to stop him scoring anything else for the round, which would mean I would win. So, we determine, after lots of maths, because this is the final turn, if the Kronspine achieves a battle tactic by killing this unit of Liberators who are on an objective, then it would turn it into a tie. If the Kronspine and these guys sprint into here to stop me achieving my grand strategy, then it's a tie. However, so let's have a look at this. So this is one scenario that could have played out. They could have both gone in there, stopped me getting my grand strategy, it ends 21-21, which is what it shows here. But then we realise, actually, no, that's a tie, but I would win on battle tactics, because battle tactics are a tiebreaker. So he then thought, well, okay, what if I do this instead? If we go through with this chain of events, kills those liberators, takes the objective off them, therefore accomplishes the battle tactic. However, at that point, I achieve my grand strategy and therefore win on the tiebreaker of grand strategy because we're at 24 points each. So whatever happens, I'm going to get a minor victory with a draw. A tie on points, but minor victory for me because I've either achieved more battle tactics or my grand strategy. So it's a win, regardless of what my opponent does. The only thing that could have changed it is if the Hobgrot Slitters had killed Bastion, which I don't think they physically can do. So, it's a win. It's 24 points to 24, and I win the tiebreaker via accomplishing my grand strategy. So that's 2 wins to end day 1 after that opening defeat. And we move on to, let's see here, on to round 4, which is in the presence of idols. So it's a bit of a blurry picture, but I'll explain it anyway. So in this one, you have 3 objectives there. You've got the 2 territories, and you pick 3 units to be your idols. And because of the armies involved in this game, the Battle Shock ability that comes with being idols won't be relevant whatsoever. But it also means that you can get bonus victory points for killing idols with other idol units. So you have to decide which units to choose. And I'm on table 21 at this point. So for this game, this is the first game of round 2, and I was supposed to be playing against Nurgle, but my opponent did not arrive. I don't know if he just didn't turn up at all for the day or arrived late, but either way, there was another player on a nearby table who was also waiting for an opponent. So the organisers just matched us up together, so we were going to play each other, which worked out great because we were on the same score anyway. We were just like 2 tables apart. And then the 2 people that didn't turn up on time, if they arrived at all, they would have just been playing each other. And if any one of them turned up, then they would have played against a spare player. So instead, I got matched up against Slaves to Darkness with Archaean, who I've never faced before, is an absolute unkillable son of a gun, and yeah, what am I going to do about this? Okay, let's have a look at the list. So, Archaean. Obviously, you can see it's a heavily converted army. There's Archaean, lots of wings, and it's got a torso, a big sword. It's a very nice army. So this is one of the armies that ended up as one of the nominees for Best Army Painting. So the organisers went round and picked out their favourite 8 or so, or 10, I can't remember exactly how many it was, it might have been 12 actually. Picked out their favourites, and then we got to vote on those ones in a cabinet. So I can understand why they don't make you pick between all 72 armies there, because that is just impractical. So understandable. So this army was one of those that got into the cabinets to be voted on. So let's go through it. There's Archaean. There is Mother Alexandra, who is a... let's see, I think these are just the unit names that have been put on here. Which is a Chaos Sorcerer Lord, which is... there's one there. There's another Chaos Sorcerer Lord, which on here is called Father Miguel. So there's 2 sorcerers. There's also a Chaos Lord, who on this is called the Witness. So there's a Chaos Lord chilling out in there as well. So there's a lot of spellcasting ability. Archaean is a spellcaster as well. There are 2 units of 3 Varangard. There are 2 units of 8 Iron Golems, who are just your fairly feeble units. And Endless Spell chronomatic cogs for re-rolling spells, which is obviously useful in a heavy spellcaster list. So my army's set up pretty well to stop spells. I've got the Knight Incanter to just auto-stop one spell. I've got Master of Magic on the Imperatant, so he's pretty good at unbinding. And generally against a spellcasting list, I'll put the ability to unbind heroic action onto Bastion sometimes. So I'm pretty well set up to deal with spells, I think. Not ridiculous amounts of spells, but we'll see. So when I'm looking at this setup, this is what I was talking about earlier when I was facing the Gravelords. A big thing that's an obvious target for Annihilators and Bastion's lightning ability and shooting. Shroud it a bit. So Archaean is well hidden here, because if you're going to try and kill Archaean, much like with Bastion, you have to go all in. You can't just throw little bits at him here and there, because he's just not going to die. He's too tough to kill. He's got a really good armor save, he's got 4+ ward save, and he's got a lot of wounds. Okay, so my setup. I've got my long strikes in this building, I've got the Incanter down there, I've got the Imperatant, I've got Bastion with some Liberator buddies, and the Concussors there. So off the table I've got both Annihilators, Liberators, and Judicators. So, turn 1 goes to my opponent. So you can see that they want to get onto this objective here with the Iron Golems. So looking at this, I'm thinking, okay, Archaean is not really a viable target to be murdered in the first turn, because he's shrouded by everything. So instead, I'm going to focus on these Varangard. I'm going to try and kill entire units, because I don't want anything to come back, I don't want any rallying to take place. So I make Bastion an unbinder for this round, and the Concussors get marked with, I think it's +1 to hit against them with something. So, and then Archaean's got a million abilities that he just stacks up on himself. He's got like +1 save, Mystic Shield, something, extra save onto these Varangard. So there's just all kinds of abilities going off, some of which aren't spells, so they're just automatic or a simple dice roll to pull off. So there's a lot of buffs going on, and the whole force is moving forward. Archaean is not that big of a target at the moment because he's so well shrouded. And against the odds, so successful battle tactic, 4 points in the bag. So on my turn, I send the Dracoths forward with my battle tactic of just them being on this objective. I'm then going to try and shoot down the Varangard, because I've got my long strikes in here, I've got my Adjudicators, which I drop down over here on an objective, and I'm going to put my Annihilators up back there. So, Adjudicators shooting. Start chipping away at these Varangard units. And the Annihilators, after the combat, because they were able to set up over here somewhere, charged into the Varangard and smushed all of them. So that unit's dead. This one's got 1 left. And I was able to get 5 points for that because I'm holding all the objectives. I got my battle tactic. And the Annihilators are still alive, which, again, big bonus when they come down and kill something. So, next turn. I get the next turn. So, I'm going to take the opportunity, and I think, you know what? I could shoot them off. I could charge Bastion with everything. Charge Bastion and the Concussors, and multiple Annihilator. Okay, those ones can't, because they're locked in combat with the Iron Golems, actually. But fresh Annihilators, all of that into Archaean. I could take this chance and try and kill him. Got 1 round to try and do it. Let's see. So, I shoot off that entire unit. I shoot off most things that aren't Archaean, to be honest. Bastion makes it in to fight him. The Concussors fail the charge, sadly. And the Annihilators did make it in, but then they got killed after doing quite a lot of wounds to him. So I got him up to 9 wounds, but can't quite kill him. So if you're going to try and kill Archaean, that's kind of what you need to do. Just throw everything at him at once, which I attempted to. Did some mortal wounds with Bastion's lightning. Shot whatever I could at him after freeing up the path to him. And there you go. So He's still alive. And I picked the gaining momentum. So complete this unit if that unit is destroyed. So I picked the unit of Varangard there, which I was able to finish off. So they were shot off, so I've got maximum points for that round again. So Arcane picks this one's mine and points at Bastion and says, I'm going to eat you as to pay you back for that insult of killing all my friends and then attacking me. How dare you? So he's put all the buffs on him. I've put Finest Hour on Bastion in an attempt to keep him alive. And I managed to stop the spell that's now. It doesn't matter. It's just going to... Okay, we might have had a slight internet outage for a second there. Let me know if the stream went down or if it's back. I think it's back now. So I think it was briefly down. So if you missed anything, then Arcane sucked Bastion's soul into his sword and ate him. So I didn't even get to use any of this boosted save that I had. So Bastion is dead. Oh, by the way, the idle units I didn't really mention yet. So Arcane and the 2 Varangard units were idols, and I picked all 3 of my heroes, because I thought if I pick the Annihilators, Arcane's just going to eat them. So I'd just be giving away victory points. So I'm going to pick my heroes and try and keep them safe from Arcane. But Bastion obviously wasn't, so he gets eaten, so he gives away a bonus victory point. So my opponent's able to get 3 points for the battle tactic and the bonus. Not able to get any objectives because he's not actually got that many units left. So there's a couple of heroes floating around back there with Arcane and then this unit. And that's about it. I've still got things to drop down. I've got Liberators to come in. I've got a free unit of Liberators that I've not used yet because 1 unit needs to die first. I've got the Concussors. I've got all my shooting. I've got my 2 heroes. So I've got a lot for scoring points. And I'm already holding all the objectives. So I'm just going to keep racking up points while Arcane just flaps around and kills something. So my opponent, it looks like there is a double coming up and uses Desecrate their lands. And so, okay, Desecrate their lands was put onto this. And what he wants to do is teleport this unit over there to desecrate my lands and also land on this objective. I think he rolled about a 10 for the spell. I'd already used my auto unbind. So Master of Magic Lord Imperator had to have a go at unbinding it. So unbinding it would cost a victory point for having an objective. It would also cost 2 victory points for not completing the battle tactic. And look at that. Imperator on his reroll rolls a double 6 to unbind. So those guys are stuck. Waste of a battle tactic. And it's looking just really bad. So Arcane moves up here to get close for a charge. The Concussors, they choose they're going to redeploy away. And they get 6 inches away. Which is perfect because Arcane's deal is he's got a hero back there that can make him pile in and fight twice. However, if he wants to attack both these units, he then goes out of range of that ability. So, wow. So he's not going to be able to kill them both now. So he's just going to have to try and kill the Liberators, kill them all, and then pile in to the Dracoths. Because he's not going to be able to be within range to fight them both unless he kills the entire unit, I think. So, you can see we were measuring to work out whether it was possible, but he wasn't able to get enough distance. So, if he rolled a ridiculously huge charge, then he could have done it, I think. But he didn't roll that high, so he can only end up around here. So he decides to just sit there and fight the Liberators. So he starts eating the Liberators. And he doesn't kill all of them with his first round of attacks. So the ones I leave are the closest models to him. So when he wants to pile in again, he still has to pile in and fight them and not the Concussors. So they're going to survive the turn. So they're kept alive by that very high redeploy roll. And I've brought back some fresh Liberators right there. So he kills them all and a fresh batch, fresh out Sigmar's oven, just pop up there. So he's only able to get 1 point for the turn. After the battle tactic was denied by the Lord Imperitant's unbinding, he's just got this objective for a point for that. So it's looking really good for me at the moment. My opponent's not picking up points and I am. So at this point, I think Arcane's just going to try and kill everybody. So I'm going to spread out all my units so he can only kill one thing a turn. And I'm going to put all my Liberators into this objective. The Annihilator's just going to go in there and knock down his heroes. So I'll start shooting off his heroes and annihilating them. So he's not going to have his Sorcerers for support. And my battle tactic was to kill this one. Or to just kill a unit. Is it an eye for an eye? Yeah, eye for an eye. So when I killed a model, I then get my battle tactic, so I'm on maximum again. So, very nice. Next turn, Arcane obviously is not going to take kindly to those Liberators just being replaced with a fresh batch from Sigmar's oven. So he's going to steam in there and try and kill them. And he does. And he's able to get 2 points that round, because I think there's still no battle tactic they could actually achieve here. Because I think, let's see, is Arcane the general? Yes, Arcane is the general, but my general's far away, so you can't use that one at the moment. I think he's just stuck for battle tactics. So you can see how far all my units are spreading out. So at this point, I'm also thinking about my grand strategy, which is why you can't actually see, because I don't think I took a picture where they're visible. But I brought on my other unit of Liberators up here behind the castle for my grand strategy. So I want, or did I? Let's see. I think I did. Was that in this game that I did that? Let me just go back and check all the Liberators. So we've got that unit. And has there been another unit of Liberators anywhere? That was just the one unit that was killed. No, so I think the other one is brought back behind that tower for grand strategy purposes. And where were we? Okay, so Arcane kills the Knight Incanter, I think. So gets a bonus point for it being an idle unit. Gets some points, but not enough. I move in there to get my grand strategy and get my... I think my final battle tactic was... what's it even called? Barge through enemy lines. So yeah, get my units in the enemy territory, get my grand strategy, rack up points. So really, I didn't even need to attack Arcane at all earlier. I had a go at it, but really it was killing everything else and then leaving Arcane alive that was successful, because he can only do so much on his own, especially if he's spread out. He's only going to kill a unit a turn, and he just can't cap all these objectives, especially when I've got units in reserve for the first 3 turns that can just drop down onto objectives as well. So if you're fighting Arcane, let's see how many points he is. 860 points. So almost half the army, so just kill everything else. And then what's he going to do on his own? So we were doing the voting for the best army. This one wasn't nominated, actually. This Sons of Behemat. These Mega Gargants and some Man Crusher Gargants there. I personally was outraged because this was my favourite army that I saw there at the event. And so I took lots of pictures of it to protest the fact that it wasn't nominated to be voted on for Best Painted Army. It was my favourite. I really wanted to face it, actually, for 2 reasons. One, because it looks really cool. Let's go 3 reasons, actually. It looks really cool, and of course you want to face the coolest looking armies. 2, I've never faced Sons of Behemat before. I've only faced 1 Mega Gargant, maybe, and that was a mercenary. And 3, because I think my list would do really well against it. Because I've got really good damage output, can kill a big thing a turn. It suits some of my abilities, fighting Mega Gargants. So, for those 3 reasons, I would have liked to have faced this army. But, alas, it's not going to happen. So these are the armies that were nominated to be voted on. So you can see the one I just faced there. I don't think I got any close-ups of the Varangard, and a lot of the time they were facing the wrong way anyway, but they've got these nice little masks on them as well. There might be some better pictures somewhere around on the internet from the event. So they were nominated. These Cruel Boys with Kragnos. And I think I voted for this one, actually, of the ones in the cabinet, so this was really nice. I didn't get close-ups because it was getting a bit crowded around the cabinets, so I just had to get a quick picture of each one. But these ones were really, really nice. I particularly like the yellow skin on the Hobgrots. I thought that was really good effect. Can't see it particularly on this picture, but just really nice army, so that was my vote. We've got some Sylvaneth here. Very nice. We've got some Skaven with LEDs, which is always a treat. So that was nice to look at as well. We've got another Kragnos, and this is in the Iron Jaws with a Maw Crusher. Got some more Cruel Boys. These are quite unique actually. They're heavily converted, so they've got a lot of old goblin heads on them, and I think this Troggoth is missing a head, so that was a very nice one. We've got some Nighthaunt with a purple sun and Nagash there. Very tasty. We've got some Lumineth. These were very good as well. Lumineth, they do lend themselves to the top-notch painters, can do a really good job on them. They've got a lot of detail, they look very majestic. And we've got some more... what are these? Are these Bone Reapers? Or no, they're rats, aren't they? Yeah, I think they're Skaven. Yeah. So they don't stand out too well in this picture I took, but I am assured that they are top-notch. We've got more Sylvaneth. Very nice and vibrant. And we've got some... let's see, what is this? Some kind of chaos, isn't it? We've got some beast units, we've got some demons. Yeah, so some kind of slaves to darkness, presumably. Very, very nice. Is that the same boat there? Similar. And then we've got some Lumineth again. And these are the prizes here, the trophies. So, very nice, very impressive looking trophies. Final game. So I'm now on 3 wins, 1 loss. So I'm already pleased with my performance. I can take it easy in this game, and even if I get totally whooped, I've still got a winning record to end the tournament, which is good enough for me. Because after losing the first game, you're pretty much out of contention for winning the tournament, because with 72 players you really have to win all 5 games to have a chance of winning the whole thing. And then because one of my wins was a minor victory, I'm pretty much ruled out of getting on the podium as well, because there's going to be a lot of players who get 4 wins and 1 loss. So at that point you're first divided by whether they were major or minor victories. So there's going to be at least a few of them that got more major victories than me. So I'm just fighting for a spot in the top 10 at this point. So next game, round 5, and I am on table 10. So let's have a look at the list for head-on collision. So the way this one works, you've got 3 objectives, like so. You've got your territory there, and let's have a look. Can I actually read it on the screen here to find out what the interesting thing is about this scenario? You know what, I've got the book right here, I could just look. Let's have a look in the book. It's because I took such a blurry picture, and I haven't played all these battle plans a huge amount of times, so I want to make sure I know what the twist is on this one, because there's usually a bit of a twist, isn't there? Head-on collision. Okay, yeah, here we go. I remember. So 1 victory point if you score the objective in your territory, 2 victory points if you score the one in the middle, and 4 victory points if you score the one in your opponent's territory. So obviously it's important to defend your own as well, to deprive them getting the 4. But you also want to be taking your opponent's objective. And I'm up against the forces of Sylvaneth. So 5 different armies I've faced, 5 different factions, which is always a treat at a tournament. It's good for experience as well. You're exposed to more different things, so you can learn how they operate. So you can see the Sylvaneth Wildwood there. There is. So we've got Spirit of Durthu, who is 370 points and is an absolute beast. He is right there. I've probably got some better pictures. There we go. There's the Spirit of Durthu. There is a Branch Wraith, which is going to be tough to pick out in this picture, I'm sure, but it's in there somewhere. It might be in the woods there. there is a Warsong Revenant, which is, I think, this one here, which is slightly off out of shot, but it's a big hero there. There are 2 units of Kurnoth Hunters, one with great swords, one with scythes. So great swords here, scythes there, in this garrisonable piece of terrain. There are Dryads, which would be this unit here. There are Spite Rider Lancers, which are this unit at the back. They're flyers. And there is Spite Swarm Hive Endless Spell. And there is Awakened Wildwood, which was deployed there. So these 3 pieces of terrain, the Sylvaneth can teleport between them. So they can't pick pieces of terrain in my territory. And because I was placing the terrain for the table, I was able to not put any particularly juicy terrain in a good position for teleporting. So I didn't put anything, it has to be out my territory, so I didn't put anything like right down here that would have been good, or here that would have been particularly juicy for teleporting into. So I wasn't hugely tactical with it, because obviously I've not played against them before, but I had some idea that I didn't want to put like woods near my territory, but just outside of it, which would be a great place to teleport into, according to my understanding of the rules. So, for my setup, I've gone for Liberators with Concussors behind. We've got Lord Imperatant in some cover here. In the garrison, so there's a garrison in each territory. We've got the Long Strikes and the Knight Incanter in the garrison there. And in the heavens, we've got 2 units of Annihilators, Bastion, we've got the Judicators, and we've got the Liberators. So in this scenario, you can't score points until the second round for the objectives. So there's no incentive for them to come forward yet into range of the Long Strikes. Now, you might think there are some pretty big, beefy things on the table here with a lot of wounds. Don't you want Bastion in there? Well, I thought, you know what? They've got pretty good healing potential, and I'm not going to be able to put a lot of other things into them in the first turn, because they're quite well shielded. I can't set anyone up behind the Spirit of Durthu, who I would like to eat with Annihilators. Probably, that would be fun. Although, actually, the Spirit of Durthu is probably not a good target for the Annihilators, because he has a monstrous action that's very easy to get off, and it makes a unit attack last. So probably not a good target for Annihilators, the Spirit of Durthu. So this is going to be my main target. And I don't think I'm going to be able to drop a load of mortal wounds on it and then eat it instantly. I think it's got a good ward save as well. So I think Bastion is going to be better served in the heavens, not miles away from the enemy, and then I can drop him down somewhere here, perhaps, and then look for some charges and focus him in on this 4-point objective that I want to take. And then use my ranged and use this to defend my own objective. So there's one unit up there, which are, let's see, what are they called? I'm trying to see on the list what they are. Are they even mentioned in the list? I can't even see them, but there's a unit of dudes there. And they can teleport, basically. I can't even find what they're called on the list, though. If anyone knows what they're called, let me know. Because I can't see them on here. Let's see. Spirit of Durthu, Arch Revenant, Branch Witch, and then Kurnoth Hunters, Tree Revenants. Ahaha, Tree Revenants, that'll be them. So, a Tree Revenant unit at the back there, so they teleport. And onto the game. So, first thing I did, I went for my battle tactic, desecrate their lands. The only one I could do, because you can't have battle tactics that require the objectives in this round, because none of them are active yet. So, yes, Tree Revenants. Good evening, World. So I just wanted to get these guys in range to steal this, or to claim this piece of terrain, with them being Galician veterans, so it's pretty easy for them to do that battle tactic. I also got Annihilators in down here, and they charge into this thing. And they do quite a lot of wounds, but it's got that good ward save, so I think it has 1 wound left at the end of the fight against the Annihilators. So can't quite kill it immediately. And then Bastion makes his 9-inch charge into this unit, and he is able to kill one of them, I think. Or he may just do a lot of wounds to one of them, but I don't think they do much to him though. So that guy takes a wound, and oh yeah, okay, Bastion does kill one of them, and he takes some wounds, but then he gets his wounds back because he killed one. However, these guys can just fly away from combat, and there is a spellcaster still alive who I didn't kill just then, who can bring back models to units, because he's still alive on 1 wound. So I get 2 points just for the battle tactic, and that's it. And Sebastian gets his wounds back, as depicted there. So in the next round, they fly away, and the Spirit of Durthu goes after Bastion, and these guys do as well, the Kurnoth Hunters, with the scythes, but they fail their charge. They rolled a double 1 when charging him, and he'd already used the reroll on a different charge, which was... let's see, so these guys steam in there and kill the Annihilators, but they do manage to kill off the big spellcaster that was there first. So it is finished off, so that is a powerful unit that they killed. It was the Warsong Revenant, so that's dead, which means the spell casting ability of that unit is gone. The Tree Revenants pop up over here, so I've got a target for the long strikes now, so that's good. And you can see the battle line they've got there, still defending their big objective, but I have got places to land for units now. And the Annihilators did their job, ultimately, of taking out that big unit and then dying. It's something that's worth more points than they are, so they've done their job. They also managed to take out one of these guys as well, by the looks of it, because I think Spirit of Durthu failed on his roar, so he didn't make Bastion attack last, so he felt like he had to attack with Spirit of Durthu first. I think that's what happened, which meant the Annihilators were then able to strike. So the monstrous action it was that makes you fight last. I can't remember what it's called. But the Spirit of Durthu survives, Bastion takes some wounds. So at this point, Bastion is just tying up 2 units that added together are way more points than he is. So as long as he survives a bit longer, I'm fairly happy. So 2 points each. Battle tactic, which I think may have been eye for an eye, because the Annihilators got killed. So next battle tactic. So the objectives can be claimed now, so I just choose against the odds to claim this one with the long strikes, because they're coming out of their hidey hole now because they want to get in range for next time. And then before that I used my hero phase shooting ability, the Thunderbolt volley, and then shot them normally and killed all the Tree Revenants. So they're dead. Bastion has Finest Hour on him. He's taken 6 wounds. Spirit of Durthu is still looking fairly healthy. He's on 9 wounds. I think he has 14. So he's still alive. Everyone else moving up, get into this objective, so I've claimed this one as well. And there you go. I think I choose not to bring any Annihilators in this turn. So I was able to get 5 points for this round, but I'm holding on to the Annihilators because I didn't see anything that was a really obvious target for them yet. So I've got Annihilators, Judicators and Liberators to come down, so I'm holding on to a big chunk of my army in reserve right now. So, into the enemy turn. The Kurnoth Hunters with scythes move forward. They're going to try and kill the Liberators. They're going to try and be joined by the Spite Rider Lancers and the other Kurnoths as well, who have lost a model. They're all going to try and kill the Liberators. I think the battle tactic was centred around killing that unit and getting them off the objective. And Bastion and Spirit of Durthu are still swinging at each other. Bastion has only got 1 wound left, but he's still alive, and all these guys get in, but the Lancers don't make their charge. So they're going to try and kill all the Liberators. Bastion does get killed now, finally. So Spirit of Dirthu is freed up. But you can see that when my unit of Liberators got killed over here, I then summoned up another unit near Bastion because he hadn't died yet. So I've got another unit in enemy territory in a really prime spot for going for that 4-point objective. So Bastion being there and not dying yet meant that I was able to bring them in. If the Spirit of Dirthu wants to spend a turn or two going off and killing Liberators, that means he's not chasing anything else. So I'll probably accept that. And the Dracoths are able to kill one of these Kernoths as they lent their back up there. So that's how this side's looking. This little wall of Dryads is chilling mostly around their objective. The Lancers there. So at that point my opponent's able to tie it up and then gets the double. So Sylvaneth get to go again. At this point I'm thinking, that's quite bad. Bastion just died and now I'm getting doubled. But the Spirit of Dirthu is still on the other side, but of course he can teleport. So it's looking a bit spicy, about to get doubled, and there's some big, powerful units about to swing. So the Lancers come in. And these guys actually pull out of combat. So that Spirit of Dirthu can get in there, and he does make his charge into the Concussors. The Spite Riders get into the Long Strikes. They do take a wound on Unleash Hell. And over here, the Concussors get killed. So I've got a lot of stuff in my half now, and my opponent is going to get a lot of points here, because he's got my 4-point objective, got the 2-point objective, and the 1-point objective, and the battle tactics. That's maximum points for the round. And you might think this is looking like a horrific situation for the Stormcast. However, remember I've got 3 units in reserve that are going to come in this turn. So 9 points for the round, so that's really put it in my opponent's favour. And you know what else puts it in my opponent's favour? The Annihilators coming in, me picking the battle tactic to clear this unit off the objective, then rolling 4 on their charge twice, and then failing the Liberator's charge as well. So that's not good at all, is it? So I committed to taking this unit out, and at that point I was thinking, yep, game over. Annihilators are stuck. Wasted a battle tactic. My opponent just got 9 points in a turn. Surely that's it. However, I do manage to recover this objective for the moment by sending the Imperatant and the Incanter into this unit and dealing out some damage. I only get 1 point for taking this objective back, and that's it. So it's upside down, but you get the idea. Look at that. 9 and 1 in that round. So it is heavily against me at the moment, but there is a lot of scope for scoring points on this scenario. So at this point, I'm thinking, what do I need? I need that double turn, because if I don't get the next turn, these Annihilators are just hanging out in the wind without killing anything, and my opponent can start bringing things into this situation to help out. There can be spells thrown at the Annihilators to do mortal wounds on them. All kinds of stuff could be happening. They're also going to just swarm in, because you can see I also brought down the Liberators and the Judicators here, because I wanted to start shooting down things. So I think I did some wounds into Spirit of Dirthu, and the Liberators there just as a screen. However, I do get the double turn. Whew. So this one's mine. Lord Imperatant picks the Spite Rider, and he does kill it before the charge phase. So he's then able to charge off into these Kernoths as well. The Annihilators do make it in this time, so they're going to completely annihilate as much of that unit as they can, but it's not imperative to kill them now, because the Liberators are going to hold the objective, so I'm going to get the 4 points for it. And also, I haven't got the battle tactic that requires me to kill them anymore. So I had picked a different battle tactic, but I do kill them because it's Annihilators. 3 of them against a few Dryads, so they absolutely murder them. The Liberators are fighting this spellcaster, and they take 1 casualty. The Imperatant unfortunately gets himself killed with that charge. He does some damage, but then dies, despite Mystic Shield. I think I was rolling quite abysmally for my armor saves in this game. But the Liberators have moved in as well to claim the center objective to get within 6 with an auto run with a command point. So I also shoot down the Spirit of Durthu. So I've got my Judicators and I've got the Long Strikes. The Long Strikes died, but I've got the Judicators who can do mortal wounds as well. And I was able to get rid of it. So Spirit of Durthu is dead, and suddenly, because I've brought all my units down onto the table and killed the Spirit of Durthu, it actually looks pretty good. There's 4 Kurnoth Hunters left, and a Spellcaster, and there's another one in the woods who's not very useful. So it's actually looking good suddenly, and I've got maximum 9 points for that round. So, my opponent, what is the plan? Kurnoths are going after Incantor, who then redeploys away as far as possible. The other Kurnoths, or the other Kurnoth, oh yeah, there's 2 there. That one was just blending in with the battlefield for a second there. 2 of them go into the Liberators to try and thin them out. And these ones, when going after the Incantor, because she redeployed, they failed their charge. So that means they're not going to get the 4-point objective, which they could have just taken if they decided to run towards it instead of going for a charge on the Incantor. So, did they get greedy? Maybe, because there was 4 victory points up for grabs there that they've now missed out on. The Annihilators, there's no one really to attack them. And next... Okay, so my opponent got 0 points. Because the battle tactic required taking one of the objectives, I think. It may have required taking this one. Not entirely sure, but it was a failed battle tactic anyway. Which means that 0 points, because I have all the points. And look at how that's turned round. So I went from 1 point to my opponent getting 9, to me suddenly getting 9, and my opponent having 0. And there's no way that I can be stopped getting a lot of points in this round as well. I'm going to have this one in the next round. If I go first, let's see. So yeah, that's a 0. So we're going into round 5. So if I go first, I'm going to have this objective. I'm going to have this one. Probably have this one unless all the Liberators get killed, but I can slap all out defense on them, so they're pretty survivable against the Kurnoths. And I can shoot some things down to limit their damage output. The Annihilators can try and get into combat as well. And if my opponent goes next, then obviously he's going to take that one and get the 4 points. And yeah, so it's looking good for me suddenly. The combination of getting the double turn after the Annihilators failed, so they had a chance to redeem themselves, and then Spirit of Durthu being shot off, suddenly it's looking good. So round 5. Now, I do get the double turn, or I do get the next turn, should I say. It's not a double. So I get to go first in round 5. The Annihilators move up. They roll a charge, and I decide to re-roll it, because I don't fancy killing this thing. I want to kill the Kurnoth Hunters instead. So I re-roll the charge, but get a double one. So the Annihilators are stuck. The Liberators just move out of combat. So I've got lots of models on this 4-point objective. The Judicators shoot down a model. I think one of these guys gets killed. I think there was 2 there before. Yeah, so one of them is dead. I think that was a combination of Lightning Blast from the Knight Incantor and the Judicators took one of them out. So on to the next turn for my opponent, and we get a charge into the Knight Incantor. But look, she makes her saves. Doesn't die. So she lives, stops this objective being taken. The Liberator... So my opponent chose the... I always forget what it's called. Barge through enemy lines. So ran away from combat with this one instead of fighting the Liberator to get that battle tactic. So I was able to score it, but doesn't hold any objectives, I think. So I was able to hold... let's see, maybe he was able to hold an objective? I'm not sure. but was able to pick up some points. But because I'd got the maximum previously, and then I got my grand strategy as well for having more units in the opponent's territory, so it turns into a juicy win, which comes out at 30 points to 20. So massive turnaround there. And it does turn quickly, this game. When you've got units on a lot of wounds sitting there in the middle of the table being important, and then suddenly they die, it can put a very different swing on things. And Annihilators, it's usually not very forgiving. When Annihilators fail their charge, they usually toast. They don't usually get a second chance. So getting that double, allowing them to actually participate in the game and not immediately being spelled off or something, was very nice. So, juicy. That means, at the end of the tournament, let's just bring up the placings. So I was fairly confident with 4 wins and 1 loss that I would get into the top 10. So the winner of the tournament got 5 wins, second place got 5 wins, and third place got 4 wins and a loss, which kind of the same as me, except one of my wins was a minor win. So that's going to bump me below all the other people with 4 wins and a loss. And let's have a look. So there are quite a few of them. So that actually puts me in the lowest position of all the players with 4 wins and 1 loss, which is very unfortunate. You would have thought some of them up there would have had a minor win as well, but none of them did apparently. All the other players that got 4 wins and a loss only got major victories. So I was the lowest of that band, so I ended up in 13th place out of 72. 4 wins, 1 loss in only my second singles tournament. I think that's pretty damn good. Won 4 games in a row after losing the first game against a wide variety of different armies. I think I learned some lessons from the first singles tournament I took the Stormcast to. I realised that keeping things in reserve sometimes is a good idea instead of just throwing everything down on the table. Keeping something back, because when it's on the table it can die. When it's in reserve it remains a threat for longer. If it's alive, it's a threat. If it's on the table, it can just be killed and it's no longer an issue. And sometimes there are units on the opposing army that either have a choice of killing something or doing nothing, and if you just don't give them a unit, then they have to do nothing. So you just don't necessarily put everything down in the first 2 turns. And you don't always have to go in big, throw everything in at once. You can stagger your attacks and focus in on things that are going to be an issue for objectives. And don't necessarily deploy in your opponent's threat range. If there's a chance you might get doubled, be a little bit conservative perhaps, and hope that you roll well is always important as well in this game. When there are things like double turns that exist, you can obviously mitigate the damage that it'll do, but there is a limit to that. Sometimes you do have to go all out and all in at the same time, which is a weird couple of phrases combined there. So 13th place, 4 wins, 1 loss. I think that's a very, very good outing. First tournament at Warhammer World, and very pleased with that. Let's get the thumbnail back up there to show off my incredible Photoshop work. And let me know if you spotted any rules mistakes in there, because I'm sure there were some. Hopefully for my opponents, but I'm sure there are a few of mine in there as well. And anything else you spotted that you want to comment on, whether it's tactical or just rules. So let me know what you think of my list as well. I felt like the Judicators were a much better choice than the Shield Annihilators, which were in the list previously. Judicators did a really good job. Coming down, they're always a threat, even if you bring them down later. Having the Shield Annihilators, to get the most out of them, I really felt like I had to bring them down in turn 3 to get the 7-inch charge, but then sometimes the Imperitant's dead by then. So you want to bring them down earlier, but then it's a 9-inch charge, which they're most likely to fail. So you're just having their mortal wounds when they land, which is okay, but the Judicators can do mortal wounds when they shoot, and there's no risk attached to them. They're not going to fail when they come down from the heavens, except failing to kill things. They're still going to be able to actually attack. So I really like the Judicators in there. I like the Lightning Blast spell, the Knight Incanter, because of its infinite range, just attacks the nearest unit. Really nice. Because obviously she normally has short range on her spells, so I like that change. Starfall on the Lord Imperator I felt was quite good. There's some other spells I could play with as well, but I liked using that once in the tournament. It actually worked and stopped a powerful unit from piling in, so I like that choice. Bastion, Still really tasty. Occasionally you'll have a game where he does nothing and he just gets eaten instantly, but for the most part he's pretty damn good. The Annihilators with Grand Hammers, obviously still amazing. Long Strike, still amazing. Obviously, there are going to be games where they don't do anything. The Annihilators in particular, they'll have games where they just fail and die. But you take that risk because for the most part they do what they're supposed to. The list is still good at killing something big per turn, if I can get all the elements combined at the same time. So I have to deal with screens though, that's more of an issue. But I've got more shooting in the list. I didn't have to shoot through that many screens though. The only one I did have to shoot through was to get to Arcane, who I didn't kill anyway. So, what am I working on for future tournaments? I've just started painting my Caradron Overlords Ironclad. So, after that I need to paint a frigate and probably another gun hauler and some more Thunderers. And then I will have a decent sized army. As for now, it's not 2,000 points, not even close. So the Ironclad will definitely go away to helping towards that. I've got 90% of my infantry done already, so just ships. So it's going to take some time, but it should be enjoyable to paint that thing. It is massive. It's maybe the most complicated paint job that I've taken on in quite a while, but it's going to be a fun one. I've also got some Stormcast units to work on as well. I've got Krondis still, who's not painted. He's not even finished being assembled. And I've got a Stormstrike Chariot as well as a birthday present. So I can paint that at some point after I've got the Overlords ready for a tournament. Got to get them up to 2,000 points first. So it won't be the end of the Stormcast though. Got plenty of them. Got plenty of other options for the Stormcast to use. None of them particularly screaming at me to be included at the moment. Some of the units I used to really like that aren't that great right now, like Retributors and the Ballistas. I'm a big fan of those, but not particularly worth it at the moment. Yndrasta I really like as well, but I don't know if I could justify having her and Bastion in the same army. Probably not. She doesn't quite do it. And I think it's time to wrap this video up, so don't forget to check out the links in the description. Follow me on Twitter, there's Facebook groups, Discord server in there. And I can tell you, if you're an avid viewer of the Andy and Rem show, we will be back, but Rem has been internationally touring with his band, the Fun Loving Criminals. So, yeah, that's going to take a while. I think it's at least a month. And then when he's back, he is going to be ready and raring to go back on the Andy and Rem show and ready for more battle reports as well. So keep your eyes peeled for that over the next few weeks, because we've not gone anywhere. It's just a slight delay in the next show while Rem is on an international music tour, which I think is a good enough excuse. So, time to wrap this one up.